Good morning, Year 10. Welcome to Wednesday's lesson. So we said yesterday when we were looking at Act 1, Scene 2 and the mechanicals that we would focus a little bit on the language of Shakespeare and the way Shakespeare structures the lines of some of his plays. So today's title is Prose and Pentameter. And the LO is I will know how Shakespeare structures the lines of his plays. You can write that down, pause the video here and do that. Obviously, to do that, you're going to need a pen and a book and something to write with. So get those things. And also, if you go on to Show My Homework, you will see attached to it is the PDF of the play. You might find that that's useful as well. So you have those things, write down the date, the title, and the LO. Okay, so we'll start by looking at these two extracts from the play. One of them is Hermia talking to Lysander after he has made her the offer of running away to go and live with his aunt. And the other one is from Act 1, Scene 2, the mechanicals. Now, we read this yesterday. Okay, so let's just have a look at these and think about the layout of the text, first of all. So if we start with this one, I swear to thee by Cupid's strongest bow, by his best arrow with a golden head, by the simplicity of Venus' doves, by that which knitteth souls and prospers loves, and by that fire which burned the Carthage queen when the false Trojan under sail was seen, and so on. This is different to, for example, this from Peter Quince. Some of your French crowns have no hair at all. Then you will play barefaced. But masters, here are your parts. And I am to entreat you, request you, and desire you to con them by tomorrow night and meet me in the palace wood, a mile without the town by moonlight, and so on. They're different. If we look at the length of the lines, for one thing, if we look at this, obviously, the lines don't go right to the end, whereas here, they do. And what was hopefully apparent is there is rhyme here. These are called rhyming couplets. By that which knitteth souls and prospers loves, and by that fire which burned the Carthage queen, when the false Trojan under sail was seen. Men have ever broke, ever women spoke, thou hast appointed me, tomorrow truly I will meet with thee. Whereas there is none of that here, or here, or in fact, throughout any of this section. Now, you might think that's just coincidence, but it isn't. It's all to do with, well, it's to do with rhythm. It's to do with stress. It's also to do with class and social status and emotion. So, lots of lines in Shakespeare's plays are written in what's called iambic pentameter, right? Pentameter refers to the structure and the rhythm of the language. 5 pairs, so that's where the penta comes from, obviously to do with 5, of syllables. Now, 2 syllables together is called an iamb, right? And when you put 5 pairs together, you end up with 10 syllables, where the stress, which is highlighted here in bold, is alternating. I would my father looked, but with my eyes. Now, here, the stress or the emphasis goes on every second syllable. And if we look back at this extract, we start to count the syllables. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We find that this happens an awful lot. Now, one of the reasons, there's several reasons why Shakespeare's plays are so highly regarded, even now. One of them is they're just very good stories, but another one is the quality of the writing, the power of the language, but also the fact that in so many cases, these are written almost like poems. This altogether is laid out more like a poem than a piece of writing or prose. Okay? And again, that's not an accident, and there is some significance to that. The workmen, the mechanicals, tend to speak in prose. Ordinary people in Shakespeare plays tended to speak in prose, prosaically, which means in a very ordinary way. The word prosaic is a word we still use today, and it just means something that's a bit ordinary, a bit dull, right? Now, these are an ordinary group of people. They're not nobles, they're not special, so they speak in prose. In Romeo and Juliet, the servants tend to speak in prose, the nurse, for example, whereas Romeo and Juliet, particularly when they're talking to one another, speak with rhythm in pentameter, like poetry. Okay, the nobility, noble people speak in meter. In The Tempest, the servants speak in prose. The royalty, and in most of Shakespeare's plays, Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, excuse me, but royalty, nobility speak in meter. So Shakespeare used this to highlight status or intelligence, nobility, if you will. And he also used it particularly at moments of great emotion. So as we go through the rest of this play, you can spot the moments where the mechanicals are talking to one another. It's in prose. Whereas when Hermia is talking to Lysander about love, tomorrow truly will I meet with thee, it's in lines usually of 10 syllables in length. So not only did Shakespeare manage to tell all these stories, he managed to tell them in a way that was almost constructed like poetry, because there is rhyme, there is rhythm, and in actual fact, he stuck very rigidly to the number of syllables that he put in a lot of lines, which is quite impressive. So we are going to watch a summary of iambic pentameter as Shakespeare used it. And at the end of the lesson, I'm going to ask you to write a detailed summary of what's in this video. Okay, now there's a lot of technical language, rhythm of language terms that you will get to understand the meaning of, and you can include. And we've talked a little bit about when Shakespeare used it, and we'll think about why is it so powerful. That should be. So let's watch this through.
To someone first encountering the works of William Shakespeare, the language may seem strange. But there is a secret to appreciating it. Although he was famous for his plays, Shakespeare was first and foremost a poet. One of the most important things in Shakespeare's language is his use of stress. Not that kind of stress, but the way we emphasize certain syllables in words more than others. We're so used to doing this that we may not notice it at first. But if you say the words slowly, you can easily identify them. Playwright, computer, telephone. Poets are very aware of these stresses, having long experimented with the number and order of stressed and unstressed syllables and combined them in different ways to create rhythm in their poems. Like songwriters, poets often express their ideas through a recognisable repetition of these rhythms, or poetic meter. And like music, poetry has its own set of terms for describing this. In a line of verse, a foot is a certain number of stressed and unstressed syllables forming a distinct unit, just as a musical measure consists of a certain number of beats. One line of verse is usually made up of several feet. For example, a dactyl is a metrical foot of 3 syllables, with the first stressed and the second and third unstressed. Dactyls can create lines that move swiftly and gather force, as in Robert Browning's poem The Lost Leader. Just for a handful of silver he left us, just for a riband to stick in his coat. Another kind of foot is the 2-syllable long trochee, a stressed syllable followed by an unstressed one. The trochees in these lines from Shakespeare's Macbeth lend an ominous and spooky tone to the witch's chant. Double, double, toil and trouble, fire, burn and cauldron bubble. But with Shakespeare, it's all about the I am. This 2-syllable foot is like a reverse trochee, so the first syllable is unstressed and the second is stressed, as in to be or not to be. Shakespeare's favourite metre in particular was iambic pentameter, where each line of verse is made up of 5 2-syllable iambs for a total of 10 syllables. And it's used for many of Shakespeare's most famous lines. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon. Notice how the iambs cut across both punctuation and word separation. Meter is all about sound, not spelling. Iambic pentameter may sound technical, but there's an easy way to remember what it means. The word I am is pronounced just like the phrase I am. Now let's expand that to a sentence that just happens to be in iambic pentameter. I am a pirate with a wooden leg. The pirate can only walk in iambs, a living reminder of Shakespeare's favourite metre. Iambic pentameter is when he takes 10 steps. Our pirate friend can even help us remember how to properly mark it if we imagine the footprints he leaves walking along a deserted island beach. A curve for unstressed syllables, and a short line for stressed ones. If music be the food of love, play on. Of course, most lines of Shakespeare's plays are written in regular prose. But if you read carefully, you'll notice that Shakespeare's characters turn to poetry, and iambic pentameter in particular, for many of the same reasons that we look to poetry in our own lives. Feeling passionate, introspective, or momentous. Whether it's Hamlet pondering his existence, or Romeo professing his love, the characters switch to iambic pentameter when speaking about their emotions and their place in the world. Which leaves just one last question. Why did Shakespeare choose iambic pentameter for these moments rather than, say, trochaic hexameter or dactylic tetrameter? It's been said that iambic pentameter was easy for his actors to memorise and for the audience to understand because it's naturally suited to the English language. But there might be another reason. The next time you're in a heightened emotional situation like the ones that make Shakespeare's characters burst into verse, put your hand over the left side of your chest. What do you feel? That's your heart, beating in iambs. Da-dum, 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 da-dum. Shakespeare's most poetic lines don't just talk about matters of the heart, they follow its rhythm.
Okay. Interesting. So, we've looked at...
Of the heart, they follow. The language may seem strange.
I'm not going to be able to go back to look at the other slides. We've looked at the examples from the mechanicals speaking in prose and compared that to Hermia speaking in pentameter. And obviously we have talked about reasons for that to do with nobility, compare them with the servants, but there was also some reference in that video there that we saw to emotion. There was a lot of talk about stress and syllables and different types of meter, and there was a suggestion of why iambic pentameter might be so powerful and when in particular Shakespeare used it. So I want you to consider all of those things and write a detailed 2-paragraph summary all about iambic pentameter. Paragraph 1, you can talk about what it is and discuss the technicalities around it. Paragraph 2, you can reflect on when Shakespeare used it, at which particular moments in the play, to do with class and emotion, did he use it, and why is it so powerful? Okay, when you've done that, I want you to submit those paragraphs to me using your school email. All right, folks, look forward to receiving your work. Good luck. See you tomorrow.